Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Fraser. Woo, we are back on the air, ladies and gentlemen. New studio, new digs, new setup, a lot of really cool shit going on, and the show just keeps growing like crazy. So we got all moved in today, got everything hooked back up, and I would say that the results from an audio standpoint have been astounding. Stunning here. Everything just a lot easier to record. There's not near as much reverb, but that's all boring shit. That's behind the scenes stuff. A lot of, like I said, folks, a lot of really cool shit going on. Hope to be seeing y'all on YouTube here real soon, so we'll be mugging for the camera and putting that kind of content out. Everybody's real excited about seeing the Gray Wizard of Historical Knowledge himself, who happens to be joining me on the show. How are you doing tonight there, Mr. Eric Smith?
I am doing well, Matt. Thank you.
Hey, we're doing this again, man, right? It feels good, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, I like it.
So I want to give a shout out to Big Hosa Fat over on YouTube. Thanks for the comments. It's good to see that somebody else gets their ass kicked by their spouse in Scrabble other than just me. But let's be honest, I have a limitation. I'm a math guy, and we don't generally do spelling very well. So it's not, I'm just making excuses. But thanks again for the comments and everything over there. That was really cool. So you got any shout outs?
Yeah, man. I wanted to thank some of our long-term listeners that I know of. Wanted to say something to Cassie and something to Reed and a Christian down at the bar.
Yeah.
That I live above. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else, but I think these people listen it's pretty steadily.
Yeah, you get a lot of feedback, don't you, from these folks sometimes?
Yeah.
Kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah. And Lisa, too, yeah.
No,
out in Texas.
Could talk to Kenny Schaefer from Thought Dump today. And the guy that set me up with the mixing board when ours took a shit, and he's getting ready to. They're about to go back on. He said, I'm real excited for him. He's real excited. He's had to kind of reboot and restructure some things, and looks like they're going to be back here before too long. So,
well, Kenny, I've had 4 divorces. I know what that whole regrouping and reshooting is all about.
Have to restart, fucking start all over again.
It can be your whole life.
So, thanks, Mr. Kenny Schaefer, man. Looking forward to the podcast, Thought Dump podcast coming back, and looking forward to hopefully being a guest on it here. He'll probably have us on, and we can go over there.
That'd be cool.
Wouldn't that be neat to be a guest for a change instead of the one doing all the? I don't know though, man. I've never been on that side of the microphone, so to speak.
I feel like I kind of am always on that side to some degree. As a co-host kind of a thing.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it's a vulnerability I'm not sure I'm ready for yet.
I'm okay with it.
See how that works out.
Well, Kenny, let's make this about Matt.
It's all about me. So we got some really cool articles and stuff lined up. Like I said, new studio, new digs, new format, and we're back on the air finally. So I got another a veritable cornucopia of content to talk about here tonight. And so you ready to kick off on some learning stuff there, Mr. Smith?
I likes the learnings.
So this comes from BBC News. Water found for first time on potentially habitable planet. This is by author Caleb Gosh.
Do they mean liquid water?
I don't know. I will have to read it and find out, but I'm assuming they're meaning, water's water, right? If it's, as long as you can get to it, it becomes,
well, no, I don't know, man, because they've found planets with water on it before. That's my lost planet.
Well, I think the planet.
Right. Could not find I couldn't find it. No, I was looking for that. It's GJ1214B.
LV426?
No.
We don't want to go
there, no.
That's a bad
Stay
one.
the hell away from that place.
There's shit that eats your face on that place.
Right, and lays stuff inside your body.
Yeah. Ugh, bursters.
Ugh. Yeah.
The headline says water found for first time on potentially habitable.
Okay,
planet.
so that's probably got to be.
I'm guessing liquid water. Yeah,
because they found planets that are mostly water, like a lot of water on planets before, and that one that I was talking about, that KSC-114 is got like a vapor, a liquid vapor sort of an atmosphere, not liquid vapor, but mostly a vapor atmosphere.
I was going to say liquids and vapors are.
I know, right?
Aren't those different things?
Yeah. But water, nevertheless, though. I mean, like a large portion of that planet is water, so that's why I was confused when this said the first time. But habitable, that's a whole different.
That's
story.
a whole different thing, yeah.
Because this other planet's like a pressure cooker, right?
we could get there, but we couldn't leave.
Yeah.
The findings makes the world, which is called KT-18b, so not LV426.
K2.
K2. Oh yeah, K2-818b, a plausible candidate in the search for alien life. Within 10 years, new space telescopes might be able to determine whether K2-18b's. I'm fucking changing it.
K2-18b.
From now on, it'll be referenced to as.
See, these names are not easy. These names suck. GJ1214B, K218B.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. The planet's atmosphere contains gases that could be produced by living organisms.
Like methane.
Because the color shift thing, right? That's how they figure that out or something?
Spectrometry, yeah.
Mass spectrometry, but don't you have to have the mass to use mass spectrometry?
No. It's they're looking at light that's going through the atmosphere of the planet, and then they separate it
like optical spectrometry.
Yeah. And then what they do is they separate it into its constituent frequencies, its colors, and there's black lines in it, and the black lines are where certain chemicals in the atmosphere, certain elements rather in the atmosphere, absorb that particular frequency of light.
Right. So it is it's almost the same in mass spectrometers. You'll see the giant spike.
But these are negative. Yeah,
so these are the opposite, but it's still kind of. I get it. All right,
if
that's
that light's
cool.
absorbed, then they can say, well, it got absorbed by that element that's in that atmosphere. So methane would have a certain color or frequency that it would block out, and if you see that as a black line in the spectrum, then you know that
it's present. Yeah, that makes sense. Quote, this is the first time that we've detected water on a planet in the habitable zone around a star where the temperature is potentially compatible with the presence of life, she said. The habitable zone, or Goldilocks zone, right, is the region around a star where temperatures are considered sufficiently benign for water to exist in liquid form on the surface of the planet. That answers your other question, doesn't it?
Yeah, not like steam in the atmosphere.
We got tons of water. It's boiling our skin off, but we have tons of water. Of course, that could be a temperature thing too, right? Because or not temperature, atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, it could be that. It could be like Venus that has the runaway greenhouse effect, where the light and heat gets trapped inside, like an oven. Just depends on what.
No, it's all made up shit, man.
It could just be too close to the sun, man.
That's true. Or not have a Ferris rotating core, so it does not have a. What do you call it? That we have that magnetic magnosphere that knocks a lot of that energy away. Keeps you could move there, but you'll die of cancer. And
well, eventually its atmosphere would ionize and blow away. So it would have to if a planet has an atmosphere, it's likely it's going to have some sort of a iron rotating core inside of it that would create that. Magnetic field that would keep the atmosphere from ionization. And I suppose, because if it's close enough to the sun to be in the Goldilocks zone, then it's got to be at least comparable to where we're at.
Yeah.
So it would have to have that magnetic field, that's why Mars has such a thin atmosphere. Once it lost its magnetic field, the solar wind blew away the atmosphere around the planet. It's not. The gravity of the planet alone is not enough to keep the atmosphere versus the solar wind of the sun. And consider that Mars is a little further away than we are.
Right. It shouldn't be near as intense.
But in Venus's case, they've got greenhouse gases that suck up the heat, and it's like an insulator. So once the heat goes in, it doesn't come out, and the average temperature is over 800 degrees on the surface.
Celsius?
Fahrenheit.
Wow. Yeah. That's hot. That's like where you start being able to bend metal and shit.
Yeah.
It's real close.
The Russians sent a probe down there, and it only lasted for a certain length of time before it just stopped.
It was like, I'm done. Cooked. It says the new planet is just over twice the size of Earth in a planet category known as a super Earth, and has a temperature cool enough to have liquid water between 0 and 40 degrees Celsius. You know, we shit all over. I do. The whole aliens, like, you know, life's so persistent. Where is it? Ideal, right? But in the galactic sense, cosmological sense, it is very, very plausible, right? But
it's definitely plausible. So
I was thinking about this, like, okay, so like we talk about this all the time. Okay, where is it? And yeah, and it dawned on me that you still got to think about this in the cosmic sense, in that other race that was able to transmit energy out into space. It came and went about 1 million years ago.
Could have.
Like they ended about 1 million years ago, and those transmissions already passed us, and like because their planet got hit by a cosmic bullet of some sort or whatever, you know. Yeah. So not only does it have to line up, so if they're light years away, let's say they're 1 million light years away, which is not that. Yeah. That's a small number, but that means they would have had to send that signal 1 million years ago. So they would have had to been technologically sufficiently evolved to do that 1 million years ago before we would even get the signal the first time.
Yeah, that's why in a lot of good science fiction stories and books, when they come across aliens, it's like the ruins of aliens and stuff. A lot of times,
like the what's left of
some civilization that died out 1 million years ago, but used to own 8 stars and their whole collective or something like that, you know, had outposts and stuff.
It's like already over.
Yeah. I mean, if life is like that, there would be a career in that sort of archaeology, you know, like a system-wide archaeology where a species had colonized or terraformed more planets than was naturally done in the solar system. So, you know, you would have to have some kind of an expert that would be able to say definitively that this was the same race, especially if you lived in a world or a galaxy or whatever where where there's all these different races, where life was prevalent, like we're saying it potentially could be. You know,
I just, you know, you have to, like I said, the thought that hit me was you got to think about this in the sense that there's a lot of shit that's got to line up. From these energy transmissions that, okay, so let's say we did read it. Okay. That was 1 million years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to keep monitoring it, right? For how long, you know, before we and we could try to send a signal back, but it's going to take them 1 million years to get any signal back from us.
You could write a novel based on the premise. You could start this novel off by having people discovering that life exists somewhere, right? And they start monitoring the civilization's broadcasts, right? They've got a way to do it, so they're monitoring, right? And then you go into the part of the story where it's about this civilization. You're talking less in the first few chapters like you were about Earth and its scientists having found this out and what's going on, and they're monitoring, right? And then you tell the story that's unfolding in front of them, which is the last 50 years or 100 years of a civilization's life. For whatever reason, they're dying out, and so the whole experience of discovering another alien civilization that's more advanced than us is also wrapped up with the first experience of watching how that civilization died out. And I guess the interesting part of
that would be neat, wouldn't it? It'd be kind of like a galactic drama of some sort that you would sort of monitor that from afar, and watch this sort of play out.
And the trick would be in what caused their extinction. You know, like, is it something that's inevitable for every species?
I'm not certain, dude, that we don't learn from observing each other. I'm not really sure we'll learn anything really. You know what I mean? We're not. You know, you get what I'm saying. We don't learn lessons from observing each other. I doubt we're going to learn many from observing an alien. We'll learn their language. We'll learn about their culture. But I don't know if we'll take any big...
I think the biggest problem is just the size of the universe. Like, just as an example, so the sun is almost 94 million miles away from us, right? And if you want to shorten that distance in your mind,
I really got to take your word for that.
Yeah,
without Google,
they call it like an astronomical unit. right? So it's the distance between the Earth and the Sun in astronomical unit.
That's how they structure that?
Okay. Yeah, and it's a little...
Like a standard unit of some sort, standard units of measurement.
For us, at least, until another alien civilization presents itself, and then they might be using the distance between their planet and the Sun. Who
knows, right? Yeah.
But it's arbitrary, only except to us. But at any rate, that's what an astronomical unit is. It's a little over 93 million miles. That's about 8 light minutes. So light's traveling at 186,000 miles per second. Yeah. Right. And it still takes 8 minutes to travel that distance. So a light year is it taking a year, right?
Right.
Our nearest star is 4.32 light years away. It's Proxima Centauri, and it's like a trinary, or even like, I think it's like 3 stars in a neutron star or something crazy like that. But that's the nearest star, right? And you can't even see that star from the night sky. Like, you can't even see the nearest star to us. You see other brighter stars that's further away.
But they're bigger or whatever,
brighter,
right?
Yeah. And then, of course, the galaxy itself is about 1.5, I think, million light years across. It's like huge, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember, I think it's million.
And that's just this galaxy.
Just this galaxy, right?
And how many galaxies? I mean, there's infinite galaxies,
an infinite
right?
That we can see pretty much.
Right.
As far that go back into time, right?
Yeah.
And so these galaxies that we can see may not even exist currently.
Right. Oh, for sure. Like the light we're just, because it can be a million light years away.
Yeah. And the nearest galaxy to us is Andromeda Galaxy. It's heading toward us, right? And it's a spiral galaxy like ourselves, similar to ours. We are like a bar-shaped galaxy, but there's the Andromeda Galaxy, right? That's the nearest galaxy. It's pretty much as big as us, maybe a little bit bigger, with as many stars or more in it, right?
Okay.
And that comprises the local group with a few other smaller dwarf galaxies and Magellanic Clouds and stuff, right? And then beyond that is, I believe, the Virgo cluster that we are a part of, and then there's this great attractor that we are falling toward as a cluster, and there's these big voids in space with these clusters and shit. So at any rate, the universe is a huge, huge, huge place. I mean, we can't really even make it to the next planet. We've not sent people literally to the next planet, like not humans, right? Maybe to the moon, which is like not even your backyard. It's like your porch step.
In comparison of going to like Mars or something.
Yeah, or in comparison of going to another star system, or in comparison of across the galaxy, or to any of the galaxies in the local group, or to any in these giant clusters, right? Like, the scale is so fucking massive that
well, that's what I mean. Like,
whole species could live and die, and you would never know.
You'd never know. Like, they came and went before, and any signals they put into space have already passed us, and we're never going to see those because they're gone. So there's like this. There's also that
or bled out,
right? Or it got so weak we just can't detect it. It's in just nothing but the background noise,
right? Blending in with the microwave background radiation. Yeah.
So like I said, it's very unlikely. Hugely unlikely that right now that something's going to warp in, but
most scientists nowadays, they say that life, they think they're going to find life like in the next 10 years, man. Most scientists, I think, in the next 10 to 20 years would tell you that they believe that they're going to find life on another planet. And sooner than that, and more of them than that, if you
but they're using a very broad definition of the term life.
Yeah, more and sooner if they're talking about microbes and stuff, right? So even more, right? But the ironic thing is that's still yet to happen,
right?
But we have we're looking in such a small space, right? So we can't really, I can't really definitively say for sure, man. When I say that I have a belief of that not being likely, it's far more belief than it really is anything, because it's a vast universe. Even if I pointed out all the improbable things that allowed life to happen on this planet, doesn't mean with all that vastness it couldn't happen out there.
Well, that's the problem, right? Something that's like a 1 in a billion type chance is still very likely, cosmically speaking, because it's so massive and there's so much out there.
And then if you include time, where there's all this potential for things to unfold in that vastness, then it just seems absurd that you wouldn't submit to the idea that there are other intelligent species in the universe. So I think I'm kind of on the outer rim when I tend to deny that and stuff, or or really it's a belief. I mean, there certainly are a whole set of things that had to happen in this particular universe that we live in, and in our own planet and stuff. Like the moon steadying the precession of our planet, allowing it to spin so long and keep the magnetic field up and stuff. And then the things we've talked about on other shows, like the inevitability of a species figuring out that if they can explode matter like an atom bomb,
Right. And did they all end up just killing themselves?
Right.
Or did they all just kill themselves with a biological agent? Or did they all just kill themselves?
Or did a rock fall out and hit them, like it did the dinosaurs, right?
Did they all just kill themselves because they all joined the same cult?
Yeah, you don't know, right?
Right.
So it could have
sectarian violence. Yeah.
Even more reason why they would suspect that the job of an archaeologist might be prudent in space. Right, because there's so many more ways for chaos to unfold and a species to die out than there is anything. And with the epochs of time slipping by, you need methods of detecting ancient civilizations, like when we use satellite archaeology to find ancient trade routes or ancient dried up riverbeds and stuff like that,
or entire cities and shit in the forests and jungles and stuff. Yeah, now it's fascinating, man. I love that stuff.
You'll need those techniques on other planets should it prove that life is prolific as some people are saying.
It is,
could
right?
Be, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, imagine that, man. If that's true, that's a really legitimate thing that people talk about now. If that is true, then almost every fantastic thing you've really ever seen in a Star Trek episode is absolutely likely.
Possible.
Yeah,
plausible.
Absolutely plausible. Yeah. I mean, ancient civilizations, aliens and stuff, like other technologies, other cultures. There would be no end to it. It would mean that every planet that you would step foot on would be absolutely just as diverse as our planets.
if I get the chance to take the pill, that means I never die.
Okay.
I'm taking the bottle. I want to see all of this kind of shit, man. So bad. Like I want to live long enough to see this stuff.
Yeah.
I feel kind of like we live in sort of a weird Jetsons-esque, because you think about how rapidly for us, man, things change compared to even just our parents.
Yeah.
We're on that weird hockey stick bend that's happening here now. And it's a bit, I mean, I don't want to miss any more of this. Like I get up every day and I'm just fucking fascinated by all the cool stuff that's actually happening. Putting all the bullshit in the world that's happening aside, because it's real easy to get trapped in that quagmire. But there's a lot of really fascinating stuff happening in material science and medicine. And
it would also be interesting test on the brain and the psychology, because there's been a lot of theories tossed around that because of Moore's law and how technology increases so rapidly, that we've been able to prolong life with biological sciences to the point to where we have improved the length of time that we're going to live compared to what the brain evolutionarily could evolved to cope with. Like it's evolved to cope with about 30 years, right? Not 60 or more.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I can remember doing this, okay? It's like a thought experiment where, because when you're little, your parents are so old. Well, I'm older than my parents were when I was that little. You know what I mean? Like I have kids that are grown up now and going to college and they're adults. So I can remember having this like thought experiment when I was little about how older people can't remember shit. And they would like, we would go to events or something and I would talk to people, and then separate from the event, they would be talking about the event and they'd be like, oh, what was that person's name? And I'd remember their name and their kid's name. And they're like, how do you remember? My family, my sisters and brothers and stuff, I've had these conversations, right? And I'm like, and I would just remember thinking, how can you not? Okay. I can't fucking remember like half the people I went to high school with, like their names, their faces.
Where'd you get to high school?
In Lancaster, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I graduated from there, but it's weird that, don't get me wrong, I definitely remember some people, my best friends at the time, a lot of the people that I hung out with and was very close with. But when I was in school, there was barely a person in school that I didn't know their name, at least their first name. Right. And a lot of them, not only did I know their name, I knew their familial connections to upperclassmen, lowerclassmen, like you're in that world.
Yeah.
And this is, when I was little, I was thinking, well, how can you not remember all this stuff, right?
Now?
Well, once you're separated from it for a period of time, it's like your hard drive, your brain sort of, I don't know, packs that shit up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when you delete something and it sections it off, but it doesn't delete it right away. But if you need it to space, it would write over it.
It's
and at some
weirder
point, you
than
need
that.
it to space.
It's because I find it stranger than that personally, in the sense that when you're presented with information that reconnects you to those, like say a person hits you up on Facebook, hey, we went to high school together, and you're like, fucking we did, and then you look them up in the yearbook and you're like, oh, I kind of remember that person, and then you start talking. I have this with my buddy. It's funny that a case in point, there's this guy, I'll give him a shout out, Ben Dobmeyer, that like we didn't know each other in high school. We didn't like run in the same circles, but I knew him, and I think he kind of like knew me the same way. Like we went to the same school. I was like, hey, that's Ben, hey, that's Matt, kind of thing, whatever. But later we ended up, getting together like as adults, like getting together, like we're not dating, but we ended up like getting in contact with each other through social media, through having a lot of the same friends, and we just started, we just bullshit about different things, Facebook posts and stuff like that. But I struggled when I first started talking to him. I thought he was somebody entirely different.
Yeah, I got you.
And it was weird. Like he and I had this conversation about, who are you? Who are you? Like we know each other. We went to school together. We graduated together, kind of thing. Or he might have been a year ahead. I think he was a year ahead of me. And we knew all the same people, but we had to kind of build the enough for instances before it finally connected. Like it finally connected with me who he was.
And you remembered.
I was like, oh, I know who this dude is now. But up until that point, I actually thought he was somebody else. And then so I kept talking to him like he was this other person, and he was like, dude, that ain't me. Like, oh, wait a minute. But being a kid, it was like, how can you not remember this shit? Being an adult, it's like you have to find a connection to it, and then once you make that connection in the hard drive, it reopens those files for access. And it's like, oh yeah, now I understand, or I remember. But
I remember a lot of the people I went to school with, but I know that when I've looked at old yearbooks, it definitely awakens even more things,
It's wild, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty interesting.
It's fun too to see how people have aged. How some people have aged versus other people have aged.
Yeah.
That one trips me out.
More mentally than physically for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying in general. Yeah, just in general, not just physically, right. Let's close this up. K2-18b is 111 light years away, or about 650 million miles from Earth, too far to send a probe.
Or anything else. Except some light.
So the only option is to wait for the next generation of space telescopes to be launched in the 2020s. That's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
Better vision in 2020. And to look for gases in the planet's atmosphere that could only be produced by living organisms.
Yeah, so they're only going to use light, and that light's going to be 111 years old.
That's exactly. So what's that tell us?
Something from the past.
This one's actually from the New York Times. Have you been hearing a lot about I've seen a lot of sort of, I don't want to call it pseudoscience about 5G.
Yeah, and not even pseudoscience, but the frequency is just a few degrees off of the frequency that Doppler radar uses to detect moisture in the atmosphere. So they're afraid that it's going to fuck up all the Doppler radar too. Like they had the petition to get a certain bandwidth, but the people that's into meteorology is saying,
oh my God, that would be huge.
Too close. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, you wouldn't.
All of a sudden, all the weather satellites just say, "Fuck it,
yeah,
we can't work anymore." Yeah, that would be bad, man.
Yeah. So there's like a few things, some of them not just like you'll get a tumor, but like, but like, you might not be able to tell weather.
It's not a tumor. Let's see. Your 5G phone won't hurt you, but Russia wants you to think otherwise. RT America, a network known for sowing disinformation, has a new alarm: the coming 5G apocalypse. This is from the New York Times. I already said that. The cell phone known as 5G or fifth generation represent the vanguard of a wireless era rich in interconnected cars, factories, and cities. Whichever nation dominates the new technology will gain a competitive edge for much of this century, according to many analysts.
Which is what the people who are getting flack from the meteorologists are saying, like, look, man, we need to implement this shit now. We haven't got time to sort this out.
You're going to have to find another way to see if it's going to rain tomorrow.
Sorry, I just remember what they were saying. You know?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. But a television network a few blocks from the White House has been stirring concerns about a hidden flaw. Quote, just a small one.
Was it really hidden? Is it like when they had the vent port on the Death Star? Like they knew it the whole time?
There's a secret exhaust port. A stunt fighter could make its way down this channel. The Russian network RT America aired the segment titled A Dangerous Experiment on Humanity and covering what its guest experts call 5G's dire health threats. U.S. intelligence agencies identified the network as a principal meddler in the 2016 presidential election. Now it is linking 5G signals to brain cancer, infertility, autism, heart tumors, and Alzheimer's disease.
Good Lord, that's a lot of things. And I can't. And at first I have to even ask, how does it affect Alzheimer's, which is a buildup of myelin on the neuronodes of the brain that cuts off the synaptic circuits and cuts off that memory, that they've actually even used sound techniques, like when you do sonograms, to knock that myelin off of those neural nodes,
right.
And people have regained their memories because it's not killing off the neural node itself. It's just the bridge.
I've heard about that, yeah.
Eventually the brain will build it back, right? So how is 5G now suddenly responsible for or even in any way affecting that? I don't understand, man.
We don't.
Well, it produces myelin in the brain? Is that what it is?
The article says that it was a, quote, dangerous experiment on humanity, end quote, and covering what its guest expert, plural,
which is
multiple
not
guest experts.
That's not even like any credentials at all. That's just your guest expert.
Well,
that could be Tom from next door.
I'm not getting any kind of definition on what the term expert. No, and we know that we use this term expert very loosely nowadays.
Anyway,
U.S. intelligence agencies identified the network. Oh wait, I already said that. Now it's linking 5G signals to. We said that's a lot of things.
Yeah, but still, brain cancer, autism, heart tumors.
It does say that it's all claims that lack scientific support.
Yeah, does that say infertility up there?
Yeah, infertility. It's gonna make your balls stop working. Yet even as RT America, the cat's paw of Russia's president Vladimir Putin has been doing its best to stoke fears for American viewers. Mr. Putin on February 20th ordered the launch of Russian 5G networks in a tone evoking optimism rather than doom. Quote, we need to look forward, he said, according to TASS, the Russian news agency. The challenge for the upcoming years is to organize universal access to high-speed internet to start operation of the fifth-generation communications systems. Analysts see RT's attack on the 5G as geopolitically bold. It targets a new world of interconnected futuristic technologies that would reach into consumers' homes, aid national security, and spark innovative industries.
And kill you.
Yeah, apparently. Infertile. Already, medical firms are linking up devices wirelessly to create new kinds of health treatments. Quote, it's economic warfare, Ryan Fox, chief operating officer of New Knowledge, a technology firm that tracks disinformation, said in an interview, quote, Russia doesn't have a good 5G play, so it tries to undermine and discredit ours. That shit works, man.
Yeah.
That's, believe it or not, there are entire like stock trade
disinformation units
that works that way. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I meddled around a little bit with at one time trading over the counter stocks and penny stocks and shit. And you'd be amazed about how much of that happens just from people going out and starting a panic that's just complete bullshit and different things. It's called short selling. And it works, man. There's people that live doing that. They're like internet trolls they troll companies. And and then in doing this, they make investments, dollar investments, and are able to either pump a company up to make it seem like it's worth a lot more than it is, or they can go and short on a company, buy it, at tomorrow's price kind of thing, and short sell it by driving the stock price down and making a fuck ton of money that way. It's gross, man, how that all works. But it all works off of emotion. Yeah. It all works off of, that kind of...
It all works off of fear of brain tumors Infidelity.
5G is also a growing point of friction between Washington and Beijing, with each side lining up allies in what has become a major technology race. Moscow and Beijing are seen as possibly forming a 5G political bloc. We're creating like weird borders and governments that exist in technology. Yeah, like in some weird form of technology. Yeah, virtual reality. The Kremlin, quote, would really enjoy getting democratic governments tied up in fights over 5G's environmental and health hazards, end quote, said Molly McHugh, head of Fianna Strategies, a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. that seeks to counter Russian disinformation. RT's assault on 5G technology are rising in number and stridency as the American wireless industry begins to erect 5G systems in March. Verizon said its services will soon reach 30 cities. It's a big deal, right? Because this is like live streaming video over your cell phone while you're talking to somebody kind of thing. Like,
it's good stuff.
I mean, that's an obvious use for it, but it's like the Dick Tracy communicator watches now, right?
Yeah.
That'll be a possibility with this kind of stuff.
Living in that Jetson age.
Availability of information, man. So remember when we did that?
Yeah.
You remember when we did that article?
Yep. Gene hacking mosquitoes to be infertile backfired spectacularly. Well, I have heard about this.
Now, here's the killer part of this, right? So this is, I think that I have a counter article to this that's coming up next.
Okay, good.
Okay. Because, so here's the headline, and this comes, now, to be fair, right, this comes from Futurism, and you said it, okay? Gene hacking mosquitoes to be infertile backfired spectacularly. But then I have another article that came out right after this that says this is bullshit.
Let's compare.
Okay. So best laid plans, the article says, on its surface, the plan was simple. Gene hack mosquitoes so their offspring immediately die, mix them with disease-spreading bugs in the wild, and watch the population drop off. Unfortunately, that didn't quite pan out.
Which now, the other article that we read prior to this on the show said that there was, for a time, a 98% decrease in the population of mosquitoes on the island.
Period, right?
On this island, yeah. Okay, so that's what left off at, right?
Right.
Well, yeah. This is great, man. These people had been like sleeping in hammocks, getting ate by mosquitoes each night, and then one night it was like.
Then all of a
holy
sudden,
crap, what's going on? I don't feel anything. You know, like this is awesome.
Where did the bugs go?
Right, this is great. But now,
you think bats would like thrive, and frogs and shit would thrive in those type of environments?
They probably do. But
it's like there's just too many.
Yeah, they're thriving, and you're a guy like, geez, there's a lot of bats and mosquitoes around.
The genetically altered mosquitoes did mix with the wild population, and for a brief period, the number of mosquitoes in Jacobini, Brazil, did plummet.
Yeah, that's what we had. Yeah.
According to research published in Nature Scientific Reports last week.
That's what we read. Yeah.
But 18 months later, the population bounced right back up, new Atlas reports, and even worse, new genetic hybrids may be even more resilient to future attempts to quell their numbers. Superbug, right?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that nature's DNA just decided to reassert itself. Like, first of all, they bred with the normal mosquitoes, and the natural DNA was like, nope, we're
Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park.
It's like life's going to find a way, right?
Find a way.
So the first thing it did was fix what was broken in them and made them be able to reproduce. And then it used some leftover genes and like, you know what? If this shit ever shows up, we'll turn this around backwards and nothing can connect to it.
Now we'll just make you resilient. To that, which is sort of the way vaccines work, right?
Yeah.
It sort of gives you like a low dose of the thing.
And that's the only side I heard of it was this side too. So I'm interested in the other article too, because all I heard was this whole Goldblum syndrome, you know.
Plays well, doesn't it?
It does.
Superbugs, everybody panic.
That we made.
Mosquitoes capable of transmitting dangerous diseases like Zika, dengue. Is that how you pronounce that? Dengue virus?
I think you're right.
Dengue,
the first time.
yeah. And malaria are spreading further than ever thanks to global climate change. To combat them, scientists have sometimes tried to alter the bug's genetics so that they couldn't reproduce. Quote, the claim that the genes from the released strain would not get into the general population because offspring would die, Yale researcher Jeffrey Powell One of the researchers behind the new paper told New Atlas that obviously was not what happened.
So, that's obviously not what happened. Do you think that any of these ancient alien guys are ever sitting around like Zachariah Stitchin, who believes that aliens came down and genetically uplifted primates with their DNA to make the human race, ever was like, no, man, they were just trying to kill those fucking monkeys? And I guess that didn't work out. You know, like, actually, we made them stronger and more resilient. And
they came for the bananas,
yeah,
and the monkey was the enemy, right?
Right, you know, or whatever. They just didn't want the monkeys, and all of a sudden, they're like, oh, wow, look, now they're using spears. That's not good.
Oh, shit.
There's a lot of them. They keep breeding, just like these mosquitoes. And now they're tougher, and they just kill the aliens, right?
In Brazil, the wild mosquitoes mated with the gene-hacked population, get your funk on, and created a new sort of genetic hybrid that's more robust than the wild bugs were.
Just automatically. Like, you feed it in one end, and it comes out like, yeah, nature's made this better, more powerful, stronger, you know.
We can make him better.
They did.
While the new variant isn't inherently dangerous, or at least not additionally so.
Thank God.
The scientists behind the project say they don't fully understand how things will change for future generations.
Which is why you're thinking God at this point, because they're already lost control of what's ever going on.
Quote, it is the unanticipated outcome that is concerning, Powell told Atlas News. Okay, so that is the everybody fucking panic, but not really.
Yeah.
Version of the article. Okay.
You know, though, if they would have made them irradiated mosquitoes or something, there'd be like issues then.
Yeah, everybody's going to turn into Spider-Man. Everybody chill the fuck out. You're all going to get like Spidey senses and be able to stick the buildings. Okay, now that was from Futurism.
Right.
Okay, this next article comes from sciencemag.org. Okay. Consider the source, but there it is.
AAAS.
American Association of Atlantean Scientists. I don't know. It says, study on DNA spread by genetically modified mosquitoes prompts backlash. For 10 years, the company Oxitec has been testing whether genetically modified mosquitoes can suppress populations of their natural brethren, which carry devastating viruses such as all the ones we talked about. Its strategy, deploy non-biting male Aedes aegypti mosquitoes bearing a gene that should doom most of their offspring before adulthood. Now a team of independent researchers analyzing an early trial of Oxitec's technology is raising alarm and drawing fire from the firm with a report that some offspring of the genetically modified mosquitoes survived and produced offspring that also made it to sexual maturity. As a result, local mosquitoes inherited pieces of the genomes of the GM mosquitoes, the team revealed last week in scientific reports.
As would all be expected.
Yep. There's no evidence that these hybrids endanger humans more than the wild mosquitoes or that they'll render Oxitec's strategy ineffective. Both the paper's authors and the company agree.
Very nice.
Quote, the important thing is something unanticipated happened. I agree.
Okay.
Says population geneticist Jeffrey Powell of Yale University. So now, like, we're getting a different sort of spin on what he was saying. First, it was like, oh, God, Yale, who did the study with Brazilian researchers. Quote, when people develop transgenic lines or anything to release, almost all of their information comes from laboratory studies. Things don't always work out the way you expect. But the paper's suggestion that this genetic mixing could have made the mosquito population, quote, more robust or more resistant to insecticides, for example, are more likely to transmit disease has triggered anti-GM news reports, a backlash from some scientists, and strong pushback from Oxitec.
Now, I didn't hear any of that in anything that we read in the last article. They didn't say that they were more resistible to insecticides or more likely to transmit disease, just less likely to be destroyed themselves by by the genetic modifications that were made. Like they're more was going to breed,
and they're saying that it doesn't necessarily even mean that the strategy isn't working. Okay. Or it's going to create more insects, right? The company, a subsidiary of US Biotech and Trexon, has a lot at stake. It recently submitted a new generation of its GM mosquitoes for U.S. regulatory review and hopes to conduct its first U.S. field test next year. I get that, too. Like, they got a lot of money invested in this, so they really want to see this succeed. So they definitely have a bias, and I'm accepting that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quote, we're not surprised by the results, but we are surprised by the speculations that the authors have made, says Nathan Rose, head of scientific and regulatory affairs at Oxitec in Oxford, UK. He says the company has asked Nature Research, which publishes scientific reports, to, quote, address the range of misleading and speculative statements in the study. On Tuesday, the journal added an editor's note to the paper saying its conclusions are, quote, subject to criticisms that are being considered by editors. So now this thing's going into looks like some sort of peer review. What wasn't clear was whether those rare offspring, often sickly in the lab, could themselves produce progeny, Powell says.
Yeah.
So this looks like they did this in a lab. It didn't happen necessarily out in the pub, right? It didn't.
Well, I think from what I was getting from it is that if the one that they did out in
like in the real world,
that some people were saying some of those lived and thus must have been stronger and more robust than what they had predicted,
right,
or what they had tried to genetically make because of mating with the others. And it sounds like that's what they're saying here. It wasn't clear whether those rare offspring, often sickly in the lab, could themselves, like as opposed to the ones they're talking about, could themselves produce prodigy.
Offspring, right?
Yeah, to see whether these survivors fared well enough.
To see whether the survivors fared well enough in the wild to spread their DNA, he contacted Oxitec's collaborators on the eve of a large field trial in the Brazilian city of Jacobina. Anyway, from 2013 to 2015, Oxitec released roughly 450,000 GM male mosquitoes per week there, with the company reported reduced the overall mosquito population by about 90%. Powell and his collaborators collected mosquitoes from several neighborhoods before, during, and in the 3 months after the trial within these populations. They estimate between 5 and 60% of the insects had some DNA from the Oxitec strain in their genome, as much as 13% of the genome in one case.
So now did they find those to be high numbers? Because wouldn't it go both ways? Wouldn't some of the engineered genes also drift? But I think what
they're saying is, yes, it's high numbers in what's left.
Yeah.
So they reduced the mosquito population by 90%, and in what was left that they could get samples of, they found this.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily implies that they're more virile
or anything. Yeah. Jason Rosgen, an entomologist at Pennsylvania State University and State College who studies insect-borne diseases, says the genetic finding is important, but I think there are a number of things that are really overhyped and kind of irresponsible about the paper, says Rosgen, who has no financial ties to Oxitec.
No dogs in the race.
The authors should have emphasized that they didn't find any mosquitoes carrying Oxitec's transgenes, he says, referring to the two genes foreign to Aegypti, the type of mosquito, introduced to kill off offspring, and to fluorescently label the mosquitoes as GM. That's neat. They must glow under fluorescent light somehow or something. The novel DNA that did show up in the Jacobina population was from the Oxitec mosquito's genetic background, a cross between strains from Cuba and Mexico. So it's like it got into some other mosquitoes. Ugh. Rosgen, like Oxitec, takes issue with the paper's assertion that the mixing of the genomes likely made the population stronger by increasing its genetic variation.
Yeah. I would too.
Failed genetically modified mosquito control experiment may have strengthened wild bugs. Read one headline last week. Quote, we don't know that that's the case here, but we do know that that this population is a hybrid of 3 strains.
Earth, soon not to be able to tell where our species comes from.
That's what I just keep saying. Everybody just needs to keep fucking until everyone's the same color, and then we'll just then it'll just be socioeconomic ways we discriminate against each other. His team, however, didn't test whether the hybrid mosquitoes were more resistant to pesticides or more likely to transmit disease. Neither was true of the Oxitec mosquitoes themselves, Rose says. Isn't that funny how the same paper, same sources, same everything, but how many, this is the sensationalism that jumps stuff to the front.
They should be like game masters of role-playing games.
Because they
Because they
live in a fantasy world.
Well, because they're good at sensationalizing. Like a lot of these things would make really good germ of an idea for some kind of an adventure. Like, hey, you know, like you got to go to this island for whatever reason, and by the way, this island they used to do experiments genetically in the late 90s and early millennia period, and there's these mosquitoes that transmit disease. So if you get bit, you're 10 times more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just some kind of a hazard or something that blends into the background of your story or whatever. I mean, you know, it's like I imagine that there's articles about the Large Hadron Collider, you know, with
like doom and gloom. Oh, no, there definitely is. Like shifted us into another
or destroying the universe somehow. Or whatever, you know. And it's like it sounds like something that you would be doing some kind of a role playing game on. Like, look, you know, like somebody opened up a portal. And, you know, it's starting to swallow up larger area, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And, like, you guys got to go and figure out how to stop this, you know, and you send them in, and they make their way into certain laboratories.
Right. Well, this kind of pisses me off because this is futurism, right? And generally I get a lot of really cool shit from them. But this is definitely a sensational – that was definitely a sensational article that was sort of put out there. File under hard science, it says. That's this, you know, I mean, the bullshit article.
It's just hard science for them.
Yeah, it says file under hard science.
And it's also labeled unforeseen consequences.
So, Dan Robitsky, you're a fucking douchebag.
There, see? Somebody said that.
Yeah, someone needed to. And we'll thank sciencemag.com anyway for kind of giving us a more fully rounded view of what actually.
But if we find out you're fucking with us.
Oh, we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about you. So from Futurism, this is another article. Let's consider the source, right? FBI arrests man for bombing his ex's house with a drone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard
he probably told her that he was smart as a whip and would get even with her.
I don't have the article because it was from the local newspaper, and I'm always over the limit on how many free articles I could get from them. But that somebody used a drone in an Ohio prison to drop drugs and a cell phone to like the yard.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What technology giveth, technology taketh away.
Yeah. A man named Jason, how would you say that? Musicato?
Right? Musicato, yeah.
Musicato is now in FBI custody after he allegedly used a drone to drop homemade bombs on the Pennsylvania home of his ex-girlfriend.
He's a clever guy.
Air support. While he denies the specific allegation, law enforcement found 7 explosives and even more guns in his home during the June 7th arrest, all of which were illegal for him to own due to previous domestic violence charges. According to Gizmodo, the story is a terrifying example of how emerging technologies, subject to ever-changing regulations, can readily be used for violence.
Well, yeah, who would have thought they were going to drop bombs from the sky? Off a drone, I don't know.
Where have we seen this before? This has got sci-fi shit right here, man.
France had a hard time with that shit in World War. I think it was the transition to World War II. They had all these like forts and trenches from World War I, and the guy in charge was like, "Nope, that's what we need: forts and trenches." And people were like, I think they got like they're flying above this and just going over that and bombing. No, and
forts and trenches, yeah,
and they did, and it was terrible.
It was not good. It did not work out well.
They needed to be updating some things.
Artillery,
yeah,
anti-aircraft artillery. The FBI also found a number of switches and devices that could trigger the release or detonation of a bomb and
a number of them.
Vehicle. All right, just a cornucopia. Gizmodo reports people in the area also reported mysterious explosions at around the time of Musica's arrest.
Test explosions, no doubt.
Nothing to see here. Move along. One man reported that a torrent of nails suddenly dropped down from the sky. While Musicato faces a potential 33 years in jail and a $760,000 fine.
He had a hobby. He did.
You can't say he wasn't.
I just wonder if his wife or ex-girlfriend or whatever, she knew about his hobbies. Like, I wonder if she like, oh yeah, that's crazy, I'm leaving, or
well, here's the thing. it said that he had multiple domestic violence
Yeah.
charges and shit against him, right?
So he had multiple bombs.
I mean, how hard
to
is it?
detonate bombs, drones, and domestic violence.
I mean, if you're not spending the $15 or $25 to get a basic background check on someone before you start dating them, you're an idiot.
Or
you're a fool.
Yeah. Or just talk with some of the neighborhood ladies, you know.
My beautiful bride, through a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing, had got like a police background check done on me. Told her I was in a 7-step or whatever, the 6-step program for serial killers, right? I was on step 3. Or something, you know, she was like, "What?" Thank God she enjoys my sense of humor.
Yeah, you know, it got you to step 3. That sense of humor got you to step 3 on that list.
Step 3.
What's that say?
Third base? I don't know. Anyway, quote, "It does not take much imagination to conjure up the enormous harm that can result from the combination of illegal firearms, explosives, and drone aircraft."
Yeah.
U.S. Attorney William McSwain said in Department of Justice press release.
Yeah, he said it after the fact, I imagine. Like, you know what? It's just bad to have this all together.
I don't know how. I saw years ago where a dude put a small, and it's an AR Armalite style rifle, but it was just a very short version, and was able through a drone to fly the damn thing around and like very accurately shoot targets on the ground with it. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's a pretty funny guy. He's got a YouTube channel, or I don't know if he still does, but he used to, and I think it's called FPS Russian. And I don't think he's Russian. I think he's just an American dude that does a really weird Russian accent. And the whole premise of his show is shooting shit, all kinds of exotic weapons and guns, and he's always shooting shit with, you know, there's a binary explosive called tannerite that you can shoot if you have a high powered enough rifle, and it'll go boom, you know, woo, it's redneck fireworks. I've done it. It's a blast. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying it for what it is. But so he one of the videos he has, I think it might still be on YouTube, you might be able to find it, is where they stuck a rifle on the bottom of a drone and was flying it around and shooting like watermelons and shit on the ground, if I remember right. But anyway, something to check out. But yeah, it doesn't. Drones are changing everything, right? I mean, in cities and stuff, people are having issues with people flying them and looking in their windows and stuff in high-rise apartment buildings and things.
And being flown in airport space, there's been problems.
Oh, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, restricted airspace, like around major airports and stuff like that.
Or bases.
Yeah, military bases.
You're not getting your drone back, sir.
Well, this
I don't care who you write. The Army has your
drone.
Yeah.
Write your congressman. See if you ever
I feel
get
like
it
that's
back.
happened.
Oh, I'll guarantee it has. I'll guarantee that there are drones that ran out of battery and are somewhere in a field out by a military base, and they won't find it until the mower finds it. Right? Bang! What the hell? So this one is also from Futurism.
They are a good source.
Yeah, well, we question that now. Navy confirms that 3 UFO encounter videos are real. Speaking of visitors from other planets.
They're real.
3 U.S. military videos that show footage of unidentified aerial phenomenon are authentic, according to the U.S. Navy statements obtained by, quote, the Black Vault, a blog dedicated to exposing government secrets. But do they?
I don't know. But we definitely got to talk about this.
Okay. Quote, the Navy designates the objects contained in these videos as unidentified aerial phenomena. Joseph Gradisher, official spokesperson for the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare, told Black Vault.
I love how that's just an omission of it, but it's also an omission of no more or less understanding.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's a UFO. I don't know what it is.
It's an unidentified aerial phenomena.
So far, it's not making it any more real to me.
I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about that. Someone asked him, do you believe in UFOs? And he's like, do you mean, do I believe in aliens from other planets, or do I believe in UFOs? Because there's a difference.
Yeah.
Do I believe in, he was kind of like, yeah, I believe in UFOs. I don't necessarily believe that they're little green men.
Right.
I believe there's shit flying around sometimes and we just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. And he also said that that the problem with people that seen UFOs is that they'll say, I've seen a UFO, and he said, yeah, okay, you know, and then the person will say, and he says, but no, that's where you should stop. Like, you just said everything you could possibly say about it. You don't know what it was.
With any confidence at all.
With any confidence. You can't really infer anything from
everything
it.
else is speculation after that.
Right. And he said that, I mean, you know, that being said, however, there are a lot of stories out there that have a lot of collaboration to them. And I used to always say, well, that's because people everywhere get the Inquirer. You know, everybody's had
the Star.
Yeah,
everyone's got a grocery store tabloid,
right? Where they've got the little gray aliens, right? So, you know, you've kind of implanted this in the zeitgeist, right? I had the idea that this is how aliens are going to look, or like in movies and stuff, right? Like Close Encounter of the Third Kinds and things like that. So, at any rate, like some of these collaborative stories might potentially be in that collective sense, right? But they may not be. And they don't, just because these things are being seen doesn't necessarily imply that it's alien civilization. Of course, a lot of people don't necessarily say that that's the case either. They're not saying that they definitively come from one place or another. So anyway, continue with this. I just wanted to touch on that, and then I was going to say more here in a minute.
I was going to tell you, man, I just caught Dan Aykroyd on the Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
Fucking dude went deep.
I think I've seen that, man. Like he was,
stuff,
I was impressed with the knowledge that he had.
Wow.
Of the stuff. I know a lot of that stuff, if not all of it, but I don't normally talk about it because
he could just like regurgitate that shit, like dates, times, names, locate. Like he was just like he was like a machine.
Yeah,
it was overwhelming to listen to him.
It was impressive.
He's got to be touched somehow, man.
I don't know. I think he's.
It's funny watching Rogan be all like, "That's bullshit." You know?
One of my first loves was paranormal and this sort of thing, and I did a lot of research on it, and I just kind of went on to some other things. I got kind of jaded with it all.
Me too.
And,
I feel
and moved on to like more quote unquote hardcore science or history, right? But.
Well, there's really mysterious shit out there that is really measurable, not measurable, but observable, mysterious shit that's out there, but to be figured out and discovered.
But this is like the gold, right? Yeah. This is the gold, though.
I shouldn't say, because there's a lot of people that, I'm not saying that the other shit isn't real. What I'm saying is, yeah, we're not taking away from that. I'm saying that there's other things that you can go, okay, that's a tangible.
You're
I can
saying
actually put
with your own lack of experience in this realm, you can't help but think that the appeal to something else is over here that you have seen or can touch, right?
Right, exactly.
And so you have your own UFO experience. You're gonna. That's how you'll feel, right? Same thing like with a spiritual experience, right? If you haven't had a spiritual experience, you're probably going to be pretty unwilling to go too far down that metaphysical pathway. Yeah. But if you do,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
So, and I guess to everybody that's listening, I have not had a spiritual or a supernatural or UFO extraterrestrial experience.
Nor have you ever. I'm going to presume. Have you ever witnessed one?
I did once, but I've absolutely chalked that up to a kid's imagination.
Okay.
And so it's not something that I had really talked a lot about because my assumption is that I was imagining things.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I've ever seen again or anything like that. So my assumption is that it was nothing. But or like more likely it's just some sort of an actual aircraft that I was seeing. Not nothing, but probably a normal thing that could explain it.
You're probably the person that will hit the bullshit button way before I will on things, right? I mean, you're very, and so that's kind of an interesting question to ask. Is why I'm saying because you were so staunchly,
against
everything has a demonstrable, measurable, sort of. Source, that you don't believe in any of that kind of stuff.
No,
but you admit that. Okay, so you admit that you did have what could be classified as a supernatural style experience, but you're saying that you were just imagining it.
Yeah, but technically they would call it encounter, I think, of the second kind. So
I don't know what the difference. I'm not that big of a UFO. Third kind is actual physical contact.
Yeah, with
right?
aliens and like being on their ship and that kind of stuff. Second is seeing a ship or something of that nature, and third is that you've heard something or seen light and went out and there's some sort of maybe physical evidence kind of a thing.
Now, for you studied this stuff. You studied metaphysics a lot. Like you were really into because
I still am.
But there was a point in time where this was a journey for you, right?
Yeah,
This was your direction,
more of a lifestyle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you went heavy into this, and then sort of came out the other side and went, yeah, not my thing, huh?
Yeah, well.
So I'm saying you weren't always critical of it. Is my point, right? There was a point in time where you pursued it more open-mindedly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, open-mindedly.
Not so critically.
Well, there's a point in time that I was on it like fucking Ackroyd. I had the Ackroyds. Man.
Okay, yeah. You were
a bad case of the Ackroyds, yeah. And I was, man. I mean, like when I was listening to him, I knew that shit. I knew what he was talking about. I'd studied those same things, man. I know what he's talking about, and that's what was impressive, man. He really knew, and he had done his research. I used to get like fucking UFO magazines and stuff, like subscribe to them. Yeah, man. I was deep in it, and as a kid, man, I was really into it, and grew up watching all the Project Blue books and the documentaries and the various things, whatever I get my hands on. What was it that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy?
In Search Of.
Yeah, In Search Of. And then the first two that actually had Sterling on it, Rod Sterling.
Yeah, from Twilight Zone, right? Yeah.
Like I was all over that. But, I don't know, man. I don't know. It could have just been the place and time for me, too. Like that time was a bit, I don't know. But
no, we're young. I was the same way, but I went down the religion path instead of the extraterrestrial, and it's weird because I kind of consider them to be parallel paths in a lot of ways.
Well, me and Lisa were talking about this not too long ago, and she was talking about an experience that she had, and she was really concerned that I would not believe her experience, at best, and at neutral disregard it. And at the worst would make fun of it or something.
Right, yeah.
But that wasn't the case. I mean, because I've had an experience like that or very similar to that, and that's what made me interested in a lot of these types of things.
Anyways.
Initially. Yeah. So I don't in any way discredit that or even assume that I'm right. Like when I say what I think or what I feel, I back it up with the facts but I don't believe that I know for sure or anything like that.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. Whatever this article is about, what they've been talking about, they may not know either, and it could be anything, but who knows, man?
I've had conversations with friends of mine, and it's like, we're good friends. Let's not have this conversation. Let's not talk about religion. Let's not talk about politics. Let's just not do it because you're not going to like me when we're done. If you really want to press me on this issue and get my honest opinion about things, it's not, and it's like, I don't ever want to take that away from somebody else. That's not my place.
No, but those are intriguing words to people.
Oh, I get it.
You really don't want to know what I think.
Right.
Actually, that makes people like, I kind of do want to know what you think, and then you're not wrong. They're still going to get pissed off.
Oh yeah, I can. Right, yeah, absolutely.
But they definitely want to know when they hear that. I don't know. I was told by my boss not too long ago that I was one of the rare people that he met that had the hopes and beliefs I did about an afterlife, and he's like, most people believe in some kind of an afterlife.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, I hope when I die,
it's over.
It's just done. Yeah. I don't want to do anything for an eternity. Nothing. And I don't want to be responsible for nothing for an eternity. And I can't imagine anything I would do in 80 or 100 years that would be evil enough to deserve an eternity of damnation or good enough to deserve an eternity of heaven.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap my mind around how anything that we could do in 100 years on this planet would,
if you're lucky,
would have anything to do with an eternity. Like that just doesn't make any sense at all. And if that's the case, then doesn't that really make this time here the special heaven? It's like the rare part of your existence, the one place that you can be where you don't know everything and there's mystery to be solved and something to chase and an anchor. of some sort, as opposed to whatever the other eternity size is. Because, I mean, another way of describing eternity is to describe it as just a microsecond, right? Like, there is no, in an eternity or timeless state, there really isn't time at all. So it's not like it's a long time, but it's not like it's a short time. It's an unidentifiable span of time that seems terrible forever and for never, right? Like, there's no anchor to that. That's got to be a disappointing, difficult situation to deal with, right? Like, if I was there, I would want to come back to a place where I don't know what's going to happen, and if I roll a die, I don't know what face is going to come up, you know,
right.
And that there can be...
You like the mystery.
Yeah, man, or life. It is a mystery.
Yeah,
I mean,
the variety and the different things. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, because if you have everything, what are you going to do? Like, what's the point? Like,
what's to strive for?
What's the structure? Well, what's it mean?
You'll just live in the glory and effervescent light of the Creator, man.
Well, you know, I think
whatever the hell that means.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's so. What are these guys seeing here? What do they think they see here?
To be clear, the new statement doesn't mean that the Navy is claiming aliens are real. Unidentified aerial phenomena are simply just that: unidentified and unexplained. No little green men necessary. One of the videos dating back to 2004 shows so far unexplained object appeared suddenly at 80,000 feet and then hurtled toward the sea, eventually stopping at 20,000 feet and hovering, as the New York Times wrote in its 2017 report. Another shows footage taken by a fighter jet in 2015 of an object that passes below at extremely high speeds. Quote, "What the fuck is that thing?" one of the pilots asks in the video. The videos were also never meant to be seen by the public. Quote, "The videos were never officially released to the general public by the DoD and should still be withheld."
Okay, so let's talk about that.
I knew you were going to want to, because I want to too.
Okay, so clearly it was disturbing enough to them that they didn't want other people to know, because I believe they wanted to try to figure out what it was first. They wanted to get a handle on what it was so they could decide to keep it secret or not keep it secret. But it sounds like they had such a small idea of what it was, and these things are so fucking random that they didn't.
Bob Lazar thinks they're his UFOs.
Well, sure he does.
Right.
But then what's the implication there? That there is a corporation, a private entity that, as a shout out to Dan, because we didn't shout at him, you know, or government of some sort, or shadow government of some sort, that's messing with this technology. And what's the point, right? If it can already do what they're seeing it do, and it's ours, why haven't we won the war yet? If it's traveling that fast and can hover,
war?
Whatever war we want to win, whatever we want to do. If we've got this shit, why aren't we using it? Is what I'm saying. Like,
why is it withheld? Why is it hidden? Why is it?
And what's the point? Like, how could a corporation capitalize on this if they weren't going to turn it into a military weapon?
Well, right. That's. I mean, if you're going to go down that thought.
Well, you have to. If we don't know what these are, nobody does. We at least have to use logic to try to figure out what a simulation,
right?
A Plutonian simulation of what might happen, right?
Right. I think it's also a possibility that this is something that does exist.
Mm-hmm.
It, like you said, it's something that may be in the infancy of testing of some sort.
But how could it be if they've had this since the 50s, man?
Well, I'm not going down the Bob Lazar road with this. What I'm saying is that this is something that the military or that the federal government at the military level or research level has built, and that they were putting it out there to see how the F-18s would read them. So it's all good data and test them. And they also wanted to see from a psychological standpoint how the pilots themselves might react to it, because it would give them an idea of how an enemy pilot and aircrew would react to seeing something like this.
But what I'm saying is, at least since the 50s, if not 40s, they've had the same things being described and
over
seen
and over and over.
Yeah, there's not like there's been a marketable difference in the maneuverability or the speed or any of this, right? these things have consistently had the properties that they've had I've actually researched this back to ancient times as a historian. The first UFO was cited in an Egyptian text, but consistently throughout history, they've been described as having the same abilities in terms of maneuverability and speed and hovering and all this, right?
So are we just witnessing a phenomena that we haven't, that's some sort of,
well, I don't know,
atmospheric phenomena
maybe
of some sort that we just haven't really figured out how to quantify yet?
That seems unlikely.
It sure does.
But my point is that if some entity has these things, if some government or private entity has these things, how could they sit on them for decades and not be using them for some purpose? Like, why would they still be testing them?
Right.
It's obvious they're way outclassing conventional things.
When we built the SR-71, we used that fucker.
Yeah.
And within a period of time.
And the Aurora.
The stealth fighter, that's obviously, I mean, it didn't exist, and then it was used in South America, and then boom, it was on the news, and then it was at air shows.
Right. Everything we've invented eventually comes out.
Stealth bomber, yep.
Yeah.
And so there is it's built, it's tested, and then it's utilized sort of approach to the way that works, right? So if you're saying if they were developing this shit, it makes sense that it wouldn't be a giant secret that they've been fucking with for 50
decades.
years.
Yeah. They would have done something with it because they've been reporting it that long, and there's been no changes. It's not like they're honing it down and making it better.
From that argument standpoint, then it's probably not likely then that it's a government or anything or a corporation that's
and that
doing
also
this.
means that it's not likely that it's alien technology, because the whole idea of a government or corporation entity having these things is that it crashed. Right, and they found it. They dug it up from ancient times or whatever, but it came
That's what
from
Lazar's thought they were old, right?
Right, or it could have been from Roswell. Either way, all this high idea is predicated upon that aliens crashed on our planet and we found their remains and we've been experimenting with them, right? So if we don't have them, if we're really not experimenting with them because they're not getting any better or worse, and then that precludes the idea that they had them for that reason. So what if these things have nothing to do with extraterrestrials or anything to do with space travel? Then you got to start considering more bizarre things like interdimensional travelers.
Yeah, right.
Right? That are so fucking alien and far ahead of our technology and conception of travel and information exchange and being, that we only glimpse them occasionally when they fold into this dimension. And for the most part, their movements aren't as exaggerated as they look, but in our dimension, they appear that way. Because of extra dimensional space. If they're using extra dimensional space, their movement would look different to us.
But that also does not discount, however, that even if it's happening, do they know it's happening, or do they just see it on their end as the same thing? Like, what the fuck was that?
Right.
When they see us, right? So that kicks it back to some sort of weird physical phenomena, or not physical, but atmospheric or whatever phenomena.
Yeah, but then you start adding in all the people that's actually saying that they've seen beings or been
communicated with them and all this stuff.
Or abducted or whatever, right? Then that also implies that maybe these things would know, even if they were interdimensional travelers. Maybe they know, and maybe as time has went on, they've developed. Who knows? Right? There's such an alien culture, right? The assumption I'm making is that they're anthropomorphic and culturalistic and humanistic ways, right? Like maybe they don't even think like us, but if they did, then I don't know. And another,
it's a brain bender, isn't it?
It's just interesting to speculate.
You can just go down these. You can go down these thought experiments.
Well, yeah. And another is the diversity, right? Like, how we're always constantly talking about how prevalent life might be on another planet, like we were earlier, right? And we get into talking about the Drake equation and these sorts of things, right? So. But yet there's the Fermi paradox, which is, we don't see any of this life. And it's often occurred to me that perhaps life is actually rare, but does exist, right? And maybe there are advanced species out there, but on their planets, they've evolved in such a way that they literally are just one species on their planet. Like, there's not a diversity. There's not different animals, different races. They've all merged into the Greys, for instance, right? And if you went to any of their planets, you wouldn't find other animals or insects or mosquitoes or flowers. You know, you would maybe find 2 varieties of flowers, some artificial shit that they've made because they've lost all their natural genomes over time, and that's it, right? And maybe they found one place in the universe that had such a great biodiversity and thriving of life that it was absolutely unnatural. Like, every other planet they've ever come across has either been barren or had one species on it, maybe 2, right? Their evolutionary path had narrowed it down to that point, but then they came across this one world where the evolutionary path is just fucking frayed, right? Every day that goes by, there's literally, we find on our planet every day a new species of avian or mammal or insect. It's not just insects, right? And maybe that's why they're visiting. Maybe that's why there's these experiments going on. Maybe they're just studying diversity. It's not personal. It doesn't mean anything. It's just like a laboratory. Like, this is the place where life goes crazy. We know this one planet where there's a million things. We can't even categorize it. You know, we have to go there and take shit and study it. And we need this shit because on our planet, we've used up all the useful genome. All the telomeres have come off of the end of our fucking chromosomes over time and genetic manipulation. And we need to find a way to add diversity back into our species. So we're studying you. I'm full of ideas.
When you said you went deep in these subjects, man, so you were talking about like testing and stuff. The thing that goes through my mind is those cattle mutilations and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
Have you been down the wormhole on that shit too?
Yeah, that was actually a government conspiracy. It turned out. I was hoping. Yeah, it was. It turned out that leads to a government conspiracy because all of these cattle mutilations occur where all of the old testing sites were in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico for the atomic bomb.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of testing that was done in that area, and they were trying to determine what the fallout of that was. Like, how much, because they didn't tell people in a lot of cases that they were testing in these areas and what they did there. But later, after the war, people moved into those spots when they got down, right? Because there was a point in time in U.S. history where they thought radiation was good for you. They would put it in medicine, and people's fucking jaws dropped off.
I saw that. Yeah, they put it on watches. So that
they put it in the X-ray machines for your feet to get the right fit in your shoe.
With radium.
Yeah, yeah, all that shit, right? So, and then
supercharged with uranium,
right? So they didn't think it was bad, right?
Right.
But then they figured it out; it was bad, and like it's like the LV thing, right? Oh yeah, there's been people living there for 40. What? Like no, and so
LV
they were
426.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and so they go back and they because they were always
lost contact with the colony.
Right. We need to go get
you have.
But it turns out that story is that the government was using black ops to get cows and surgically remove tissue tests.
So they could go test the amount of radioactive.
And specifically the parts of the tissue that would divide, the cells that would divide quickly. So your skin, tongue, and those sorts of things, right? So, and that's mostly what was missing from these cows was like eyeballs, tongues, and patches of their skin.
So the cover-up here is they didn't want to tell the public, oh, we're testing these things because you might all be dying because we didn't know that it was unsafe to move back here.
And it turns out that nature reclaims pretty efficiently and cleans pretty efficiently, and there wasn't much to worry about, and those things kind of just dropped off the radar, and you don't really hear much about them anymore. At least I have.
Not now. Yeah.
And see, again, they went in, they did their thing. A urban legend popped up about it, right? That was misconstrued with aliens, but it ran its course. And they tested it and out, and now they don't, right? There was some kind of resolution. If they had alien technology from the 40s, there would be something that would be different. You'd see a marketable advance or some kind of a, you'd be able to track it in some way, but we can't. We don't know anything about it. It's like we don't even know when it's going to happen. So we just capture it on film and hearsay and stuff and try to figure it out,
and eyewitness and this kind of stuff.
Right. And it makes you want to go back and listen to people who have had actual personal encounters and hear their story.
That's why Aykroyd was going deep on some of this. He's like, these people were credible.
Betty and Barney Hill, for instance, is one of the people that he and many UFOologists will pull out of their hat when they start talking about credible stories and witnesses. And she has the physical evidence of her dress and the car and things of that nature. And there's missing time involved in it. I mean, that story is the foundation of things like the X-Files. Like people like Chris Carter would go off and tell. That's what I was saying earlier about people who are able to sensationalize. They can take these facts that are on the edge and they can make a story out of them, right? But for the UFOologist, it's like, man, I wish I knew what happened. This is the closest evidence we have.
If it were to happen, it would be maddening. It really would be. To be like, this happened to me. Sure. Now I want to go connect to it again.
And you can't.
And you can't.
No.
You can't. You can't. You have no control over it whatsoever, nor any understanding of it whatsoever.
Have you seen Fire in the Sky?
A long time ago.
It's a perfect example. That guy who was a logger in real life, and he got abducted by aliens, and when it came back, his whole life was destroyed. He had mental issues because he himself couldn't come to terms with what had happened. He couldn't talk to nobody because he was absolutely convinced they would put him in an asylum.
Institution,
He lost his marriage. He lost his kids. He lost his job. And when they made that movie, if you watch that movie and you take it from the perspective that you're just watching this guy lose his life, and then the last 10 or 15 minutes of that movie, what happened to him, oh my God, if that fucking happened, the trauma alone, if it happened to a real person from other people doing it, would be outrageous. It would be considered torture, doing things against your will.
Yeah, it's kind of violent what they did.
Yeah, man. And if you fucking had that happen with fucking aliens and it was completely out of your control and unrelatable, how could you not question within your own mind if it was broken itself?
Right.
Like, how would you know? Your whole frame of reference would have been absolutely destroyed.
Right.
There would be nothing you could really, truly believe in anymore.
Yeah.
And it would just wreck you, man. It would wreck a normal person. It really would. And
yeah, you're right. It would be really hard to deal with.
It would. Yeah. Even if you didn't say a word to nobody and didn't want anything out of it, you would be fucked.
Yeah. Crazy, kook, whatever.
Yeah, or just your own inside feelings of what means anything. Like, would you go to church the next day?
Would you do anything?
Would you feel that God had any power to do anything? Like, you would question. I'm not saying they do, or he would or he wouldn't, right? I'm just saying you would question these things, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't understand.
It'd fuck you up.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it really happened to you, it would mess you up bad. Yeah, I guess it would. Yeah, because they weren't gentle with him in that at all.
Man.
Yeah,
it was very sterile, and he's like very much like a lab rat or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes away your humanity.
Well, I wonder if it's not something like it's some traumatic event has happened or some sort of psychotic break, and that's just the way that the brain just stitched the event together.
The thing is, when I was going to say,
but then
earlier,
you have like these like people that have them together, like you were talking about.
Sure,
then that's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense.
And the Nuremberg wood carving and things like that. Yeah, there's been a lot of evidence of that sort of thing, or just the stories, right? Like when you hear stories of people who have seen things.
Yeah.
It's remarkable how similar they can be. And you can almost always sort out a person who's just making something up versus someone who's not.
But there's something in common there. Like people that have near-death experiences all experience very much similar to the same thing.
Which is one of the reasons why I give credence to that and talk about it a lot and stuff, and talk about the connection to DMT and those experiences and all of that. Like, I'm not beyond my woo factor, but it's got to be pretty specific. And there are some things that are pretty specific.
Well, I don't know, mass hallucination, like everybody's seeing the same thing. Like this starts to get really, really weird, man, at some level. And you can't just chalk it. You're right. There's too much of it to just say all of it's nonsense.
The lights over Phoenix.
Part. Yeah. There's video of that shit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and a V formation, and nobody knows what that is. And can you say or in the mass hallucination? There's that, and when the White House was had the UFOs flying over, the White House and the Army was firing at them.
That happened in California too, around World War II, on the West Coast.
Did it?
That a bunch of they had a bunch of anti-aircraft artillery in case.
Yeah.
There was an invasion through
happened at the White House too. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, and
they put spotlights on it, and they were fucking unloading on something in the sky, and
it was there.
Yeah,
but
like tons of people saw it. It was on the front page of newspapers, all kinds of stuff.
What do you say? Like it's a natural phenomenon that would be atmospheric in any way, or would follow the normal rules of any other atmospheric condition. It would begin, it would end, it would dissipate, right? And even the things that they didn't really know about, like what's the lightning bolts that they recently discovered? I keep wanting to think that they call them fairy trails, but I think there's actually another name. But they're lightning bolts way up in the upper atmosphere that are huge, and like they were rumored to exist, and people had said they seen them and stuff, and eventually they caught them, right?
Yeah.
And they're just a really rare phenomenon. There's things like sun dogs.
Right.
That's a really rare phenomenon, which I've seen that once, right? There's a lot of that, right? But the stories that people talk about when they've had, especially the encounters of the second kind.
What is that?
Where they see an actual ship, and or touch a ship. They're not inside, and they're not dealing with aliens themselves, right? But they've seen what they believe to be some sort of a spacecraft, and have in some cases touched it, right? And it's left like some physical trace. It's not just something
like those Air Force dudes that touched it.
Yeah,
on that Air Force,
on the air
base.
Yeah, exactly, like that. Like a lot of those people that describe those stories are really similar, man.
Yeah,
and it's like, I don't know. What's the bigger question mark here? Is it that their stories have such similarity to it when they themselves don't know each other, or is it that they can't in the end quantifiably have any evidence, or is it that it's real and these things exist? I'm not sure what the bigger question there is, but like you said, man, there's something going on, and there's lots of cases where 3 or 4 or 5 people will see something, let alone a whole city like Phoenix and stuff, right? So what do you say, right? Even at that point, like 4 people are telling you something. Unless you're looking to get into a fight, what are you really going to say?
Naval aviators, multiple naval aviators, multiple instruments, tracking and following these things and measuring them. Yeah, it's that's the one that has me a little fucking perplexed. Yeah, but I still think it's infinitely more likely that it's terrestrial.
Yeah, maybe. Okay? Yeah. I mean,
I don't know what it is, and I don't understand it yet. But I don't necessarily. Until something lands on the White House lawn or somewhere and pops the hatch, right. Okay, then I'll be like, now I believe in that's a real thing. But that's because it'd be demonstrable, and even then I'm going to be critical. Yeah, I'm be like, okay, is this some sort of mass bullshit thing that's going on? Like I want scientific study, I want peer review,
or your own personal experience,
or my own personal experience. I question sometimes too.
Sure,
I just don't understand what I'm seeing. I don't necessarily know that it's supernatural or whatever. Right?
I question my experience because I was 10.
Exactly. Yeah. Or drunk, or
right, or whatever. Yeah, whatever it would be. Yeah.
It was a good party, man. Speaking of parties, this one actually comes from Thrillist. Amish men escaped cops after getting caught partying in horse-drawn buggy.
Well, they do have the advantage of an all-terrain vehicle, don't they?
Well, and one that's autopiloted too.
Right? Yeah.
The original Tesla.
I've known some Amish people who regularly would get drunk with me and some friends, and they would get on their horse, and the horse would just take them back.
Take them home.
Yeah. They could even be passed out. Yeah. They'd just wake up in the barn, they'd say.
Yeah, or laying on the floor in the barn, which is still okay, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
This past weekend, 2 Amish men in Geauga County, Ohio, packed some spiked iced teas and strapped a 12-pack of beer of Michelob Ultra to the roof of their horse-drawn buggy. The carriage had a stereo system with not-so-neighborhood-friendly speakers. The day of rest was young, and it was theirs, until the cops tried to pull them over for drinking and driving a horse. I just want to go. I want to see the trial.
Yeah, me too, man. I want to see the horse come in as evidence.
A deputy was on patrol Sunday morning when he saw the mobile party and attempted to question the 2 men. But when the Amish boys set out to rage, the Amish boys won't be stopped.
Yeah.
So instead of complying, the two quickly ran into nearby woods, and the horse ran away like a self-operating getaway car. Yeah, you can yell at a horse to pull over all you want.
No.
It's not going to pull over. It's going home.
Everybody just ran away. Oh, well, I guess I'm done here.
Respect my authority. Stop. The time
some kind of, just like in the middle of nowhere too, like on some road.
Yeah, some
like there's like nobody
country
around or nothing. Like fuck.
He's got it all on his dash cam video.
Yeah, like people running out of the frame after 3 minutes, and then the horse running away.
Right. The time their party began is unknown, but it seems from the amount of beer packed into the car that it wasn't stopping anytime soon. Fox 8 Cleveland reported that younger members of the Amish community often, quote, experiment with influences from the outside world, but that authorities in the county still have a duty to enforce the law. Now the men have both the Lord and the authorities on their backs. Uh-oh.
That's classic.
Fuck. Chief Deputy Joe Dragovich from Transylvania apparently told Fox 8 Cleveland that he's never operated an Amish buggy with a he said never operated an Amish buggy with a horse, but he's been told that horses will know the way home even if nobody is leading them.
True.
Quote, and that horse went a little further down the road and onto an oil gas well road and stopped, he said, a crucial contribution to the escape. When the cop caught up, he surveyed the scene. A beer can was crushed. The beer on the roof sat guiltily. The horse had a poker face. The cop had the buggy towed. That's funny.
Yeah, it must have been fun to watch
they
that.
Just lead the horse up on the flatbed with the leg in there? Or do they just tie a rope to the horse and drag it down the road? The cop had the buggy towed and the horse sent off to a farmer. Answers that question. Then it became a waiting game.
I'll think of the phone. What is it? Just call like a farmer. Hey,
we got a horse.
Can you hold this horse for us?
Well, sometimes things happen. Farmers, unfortunately sometimes pass away and they have to take the animals and get them to other places and have people come in and caretake for them. But they also get out a lot. And so there's a protocol, I'm sure, in farming communities where, we got a horse, but it just jumped a fence somewhere and it's 20 miles or 10 miles away from home. We gotta put it somewhere until we figure out where it goes. He says, quote, unfortunately, they're not licensed as far as the buggy goes, Drakovich said, but it is a vehicle and it's on the roadway and the laws do apply, a.k.a. you can't drink and drive a horse, also known as you can't drink and drive a horse. That's not the appropriate use of a.k.a., right?
Nope.
Is there an exception for people who dedicate their lives to resisting worldly temptation? Nope. And if the men are caught, they may be charged with failure to comply. Next time, stay in one place and call a horse-drawn Uber, boys, with the phones that they don't actually have.
Most of the ones I've seen had phones.
This was Ruby Anderson made an attempt here to write a very funny article, and she did a good job until she did the AKA thing. Then she sort of lost me there. I'm too critical, man. Okay, so study caption. I thought this one would be good because this is sort of, I felt might fall into the, our last article for the night, by the way, but fall in the Orco R sort of world here a little bit. But a prominent German neuroscientist committed misconduct in, quote, brain reading research. A German funding agency imposes strict sanctions on Niels Beerbaumer, whose studies, it says, contain incomplete data, but Beerbaumer stands by his work. I thought it was going to be something cool, like, he was looking at your
private thoughts.
Yeah, your private thoughts and shit. A prominent German neuroscientist committed scientific misconduct in research in which he claimed to have developed a brain monitoring technique able to read certain thoughts of paralyzed people, Germany's main research agency has found. The DFG's investigation into Niels Beerbaumer's high-profile work found the data and 2 papers were incomplete and that the scientific analysis was flawed, although it did not comment on whether the approach was valid. In a September 19th statement, the agency, which funded some of the work, said it was imposing some of its most severe sanctions on Beerbaumer, who has positions at the University of Tübingen, Germany, and the Weiss Center for Bio and Neuroengineering in Geneva, Switzerland. The DFG has banned Beerbaumer from applying for its grants and from serving as a DFG evaluator for 5 years. The agency has also recommended the retraction of the 2 papers published by Pelos Biology, and says that it will ask him to return the grant money that he used to generate the data underpinning the papers. Sounds like somebody cheated or lied. Yeah, and they found out, and they're like, "Oh, you're out of here, bitch!
Give us our money back."
I have some firsthand anecdotal experience with someone doing research at a university and then promptly getting thrown the fuck out.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, like do not pass go. They shut this dude down, and
whoa, do tell.
I had to be careful because I was currently. There was a technology that I was. Remember, I told you that I've been employed before to look at like technologies and things to see, because there's a lot of snake oil sales type stuff. You get something sufficiently complex enough, and people start to believe it's fucking magic, right? And my job was to take these things, if possible, recreate them, like materially. They'd give me the money and the materials to recreate them. And then to actually diagnose the stuff and look at it and see what it's actually doing. And so when we had met this person, without going into specific details or names, okay, they had just, when the first time I talked to this person, they were still at this university. This technology was so groundbreaking and everything, and this university was studying it to try to explain the phenomena because it was bending the laws of physics.
The Hutchinson phenomenon.
And then he was promptly removed from the university, but he was still trying to kind of sell this idea, this technology.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and there were other university professors and stuff involved in this. Some of them I actually spoke with, but so I recreated the thing. I basically rebuilt it and was able to backwards engineer that. The trick, there was a trick. It was a trick. It was a parlor trick. The trick was that he was hiding he was creating an efficiency in a system that was present already. And then through his technique was removing this inefficiency, making it look like the system was picking up a net gain of efficiency when actually all it was doing was like taking the brakes off, in a sense, more than anything else. But depending on how you looked at it and the way it was presented, it could look very miraculous.
Yeah, I got you.
But I rebuilt the fucking thing, right? I was able to immediately demonstrate the same phenomena. And I was like, whoa, this is nuts, right? And then I ultimately was able to figure out, oh, wait a minute. If I don't put this thing on here at all, it runs. Okay, now I get what's happening, right? When you put this mechanism on here, it creates a drag. It creates an inefficiency. But that's where it looks like you're starting from with it running full power. It's really not. It's already it's only at 90%.
Yeah.
So when they do their little magic trick, they remove the load, so it looks like the system picks up this massive efficiency gain through the use of technology, when really it doesn't. So I think what happened when I figured it out, I went, oh, now I know why that university threw him the fuck out and said, just don't come back, and we want you with you in any way, shape, or form, right? Don't use our name, don't. So it was that they figured it out, and once they figured it out, they knew that it would be like, you guys were buffaloed by this for how long? Because I think he was on a university. He was at a university doing testing and stuff for like over a year, and they were funding him. He was coming in, and he was like on staff now, and he had a space and all this instrumentation and stuff. Because he was trying to explain, and some grad student or professor probably went in when he wasn't there or something and was like, this is bullshit. And this is why it's bullshit. And that's what I found out. These people were looking to give this guy like $1 million.
Yeah.
And so they were just like, hey, can you look at this? And
One more time.
I called him back. I was like, keep your money, boys. It's bullshit. Yeah. It isn't. It would be. We'll talk about it offline, because if I go any deeper in it, it's going to be obvious what I'm talking about. But I think that it does have some real world applications, just not what they were purporting it, what he's trying to sell it as.
Yeah.
Is like this over unity type free energy or type thing. So anyway, the DFG has found scientific misconduct on my part and has imposed sanctions. I must therefore accept that I was unable to refute the allegations made against me, Beer Bomber said in a statement emailed to Nature. In response to the GFG's findings, in a subsequent phone conversation with Nature, Beer Bomber added that he could not comment further on the findings because the GFG has not yet provided him with specific details on the reasoning behind the decision. And the university, that they did the same thing. Like there was no Yeah, there was no. I had
his peers threw him out, and that was that.
And that was that. Yeah, you're out of here. And I think that's probably this feels very familiar.
Yeah, it sounds
to me.
like it.
Like in academia, when you fold them, when you come in with a parlor trick and you fold them, they get really pissed about that. It's embarrassing, right? They don't want to be connected to that kind of thing.
I think all academics are just jaded people, and they want something like that to really be real. And if they get duped, thinking it might be, and find out it's not,
oh, it hurts.
Yeah, they take it personally.
Yeah, really. Well, it's a reputational thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. There's that, right? You got fooled.
Yeah.
And as Bush Jr. said, you fooled me once,
but you fooled the fool.
Yeah, you just don't fool the fool.
Speaking of academics,
wasn't well?
No, we won't go down that road.
Yep.
Nope. Very cool, man. Hey, we did a $144 or 45 here coming up, man. A good welcome back show.
Somebody better get a good workout.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope he does.
A longer workout,
a little bit longer. Stay on that treadmill, man. Run your ass off.
You got to go until we stop. I could just tell a 15-minute story knowing me.
All right.
Is that all you got? And they'll be like, well.
Back in WWII. We could just bloviate here for another hour and watch him just die on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Bloviate. That's my new word. I'm using that tonight.
I like it.
You do?
I feel like it was like next to words like ablative and oblique and obelisk.
You've been playing Scrabble again?
No, I'm just thinking of words that make me think of other words that you wouldn't put in one sentence.
Oh, we've reached that portion of the show tonight, folks.
Yep.
All right, you want to wrap up there, man?
Yeah, I'm just spouting out words for sure.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Check us out at www.noshitcast.com. That's KNOWSHITCAST.com. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Leave a comment. We love to hear from you.
Hey. And tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
You've got friends.
You've got friends.
And you like your friends.
Share.
And you want your
share.
friends to enjoy life like you enjoy life.
Stop sharing all the stupid shit. Start sharing fun stuff like this show out there, folks. It's easy. Just hit the share button. That's all you got to do. It even picks you can just pick the platform from a list. It all works
Hyperlink
out.
that all over the place. Just look, every friend think, what would be really cool looking on your Facebook page? This No Shit Cast.
No Shit Cast right here. Awesome stuff. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch y'all next time. Bye.